YouTubers and microgrinders out and from microgrinder.com, back again with another episode of our How to Beat Bovada Zone series. And so it's a Thursday night on Bovada, and games are starting to get juicy with the weekend coming along. So Thursday night's when it starts to get really good. And I'm happy to say that there is a big player pool on 10NL, so I'm able to play 10NL zone along with 5NL zone. And I'm not going to have to worry about the player pool being drastically small and having to play short-handed, or I'm playing 3-4-handed and having to sit out. So let's hope that this is a good session. Games tend to be a bit more crazy, a bit more aggressive, and not so much straightforward like it is when you play during the week when players are tighter and they're more predictable. Here they're a bit less predictable on the weekends because you have a lot of recreational people starting to play on Thursday and Friday and Saturday night. So let's go ahead and get started with the action. So just going to start folding all my junk hands as usual and not really worrying about it. Sandwiched between two deep stacks. If he opened, I wasn't going to open, and even if he didn't open, I'm still going to fold 4-6 off. It's just not a good enough hand to be opening. Four, 5 suited, you can open under the gun. Really, it's up to you if you want to balance your range and throw in some suited connectors. Pocket deuces, just going to go ahead and flat. 7-9 off, going to go ahead and fold. And then here we're done with this hand. Bottom pair with bottom flush draw. Yeah, we have no sort of draw, no sort of equity in here unless it goes runner with a deuce. So we're pretty much done with that hand. And against the deep stack, that's making it 3.5x. I'm just going to fold queen jack suited out of position. So you'll see me topping off on a regular basis, and the reason why I'm making sure I'm topped off tonight is because there are a lot of opponents in the player pool tonight and a lot of deep stacks. I want to make sure that I have 100 big blinds at all times, or as close as possible. Queen jack off, middle position, you could open, you could fold, it's really up to you. I think it's a bit marginal. It's near the bottom of my range for my Broadway cards, and I don't think it's that strong of a hand, and of course it really isn't that strong of a hand. And when I get 3-bet here, it's just an easy fold. Interesting move. Guy just open jams for $3 down here on 5NL. So that's what I'm saying. It's a bit more unpredictable on the weekends. You get a lot of crazy aggressive people. If I had a decent pocket pair there, I'd probably snap that off because he's probably jamming with any two cards. He's probably just tilted and just wants to throw money around and gamble. Versus a really small 3-bet, pocket nines, I'm obviously never folding. We could 4-bet as a bluff, but I just like flatting given this price. And I'm going to go ahead and flat, ace-4 versus under the gun, min open. When he checks, I'm going to go ahead and check back. And we do have a runner, but just don't see how often it's going to get there. So I'm going to go ahead and fold. And I'm going to go ahead and check the 10 here. And we're going to go ahead and fold our 9s here since we have third best pair. When he bets, I'm going to go ahead and call. I like taking a check call line here because when we check here, we get people to induce bluffs so they don't have an ace, and we have middle pair with second best kicker. Ace-9 off, gonna go ahead and open that on the button. But we are not going to call a middle position open, and I think he never has an ace here. He could have had a 6, and that would be really sick. But no, we end up chopping the pot, so he got saved on the river there. So really can't fault him for opening that hand. Sorry, not opening hand, but raising middle pair when I check. It makes a lot of sense looking at his hand now. 10-9 off, gonna go ahead and fold. 8-6, gonna go ahead and fold under the gun. And I'm just going to do my standard 2.5x for my entire range. Fortunately, nobody wants to play when I pick up jacks, but that's okay, I'll take down their blinds. 10 jack off, just go ahead and fold. It's too weak of a hand to be opening in middle position. And then with this hand, we don't have a diamond, so we're pretty much done with this hand. Pocket fives, definitely playing our opening our pocket fives. Same thing with our queen king. Four six off. I won't raise this, so I'm just gonna go ahead and check. And we get called by somebody that's around 110 big blinds deep. On this board texture, I think it hits a lot of his calling range here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and check. The 6 does help me out now that I pick up the flush draw, and you know, I'm not getting great direct pot odds, but if he somehow does have trip 6s, I am going to get paid off on river, so I am going to call. And when I miss, I'm sure he's going to go ahead and fire another bet, but when he doesn't, I'm just going to go to showdown. I get 3-bet here, blind versus blind, just going to go ahead and make the fold. Typically people at these stakes, they aren't 3-betting that strong or that weak of a range. It's typically a really strong range, so I'm just going to err to the side of caution. Three nine off, easy fold. 8-3 off, same thing. 8 queen off, just getting rid of all the junky hands. And here I am going to flat, getting 3.5 to 1. I wouldn't recommend flatting for beginning players, but if you are decent at playing post flop, then I don't mind flatting there and getting 3.5 to 1 with the suited 1 gapper. And here we're going to go ahead and raise the limper. I'm going to make it 50 cents. And ace king versus the deep stack. I'm just going to go ahead and flat. You don't have to 3-bet ace king all the time. Good flop for us. Only thing we're worried about is the straight. King 9 and King 10, and when he fires the bet out, I'm just going to go take a check call line. Do not like the club that much, but you know, I don't hate it. And yeah, I really hate that river because the queen just got there for the straight. And we end up chopping the pot. Versus under the gun raise, big slick in position, I'm just going to go ahead and flat again. Typically what I've seen is that people are opening a really tight range under the gun, and we don't have that much fold equity to begin with, so just go ahead and, you know, call and try to see a flop. And you know, if we're up against something like ace queen, then we're golden here. Not a huge fan of the hearts, so I'm going to go ahead and check behind for pot control. And then, you know, I don't know what he's going to call that's worse than ours, so I'm just going to go ahead and check. And I don't know if he would have called a bet there with ace-3 off, to be honest. Interesting, when this opponent donked into me, he doesn't really have too much behind. And if I think that he does either have a 6 or a 7 or diamond draw, I'm really far behind. But I am going to flat once because I really never think that he ever has a 6 there. I think he either is on the flush draw or he has top pair of sevens. When he checks the turn, I'm going to check behind again for pot control. We do hit the straight, but there's a 4 flush on the board, and if he bets out, we have to fold. So we'd go ahead and check it down, and if he has a spade, good for him. But it was nothing but a stone cold bluff, so, you know, sometimes people do that. Bottom pair, crappy kicker, coordinated board, just going to go ahead and fold. So pocket nines here, we could squeeze, but I'm just going to go ahead and flat. It's not that strong of a hand. Here I am going to go ahead and 3-bet for value versus a cutoff open. Here I'm going to go ahead and flat the min open on the button. We pick up the gutter, so it's a pretty good flop for us here. It checks. I am going to go ahead and bet now. And when he does call my 3-bet, I think he has a fairly strong range, so I'm going to go ahead and check and hope to hit a 10. I don't think I have any fold equity on this board texture. And when I do bet here for my nines to get 2 callers, I'm just going to go ahead and check it down, try to get a free showdown. And he has pocket fives, so yeah, I definitely misread that. But I put him on a fairly strong range. I'm surprised he called 3-bet out of position with pocket fives. And when this opponent throws out a fairly significant bet over a pot size, well, not a pot size bet, but close to a pot size bet, I think I have to fold here. I just don't think he has any bluff in his range there. So, just making our standard opens, not much action going on. Here we do pick up the 3rd nut flush draw. I'm happy just to go to showdown with this. And of course, I am never folding to that bet sizing, but I'm not going to lead out and try to get him to raise. Here, of course, I'm never folding when our opponent donks into us. Pocket sixes on this board texture. Easy check to the raiser. And I am going to give him credit. When he donks out, I think he's on a flush draw majority of the time, so I'm going to go ahead and lead out. And here I'm going to go ahead and raise. And oops, I timed out, unfortunately. I was going to raise as a bluff, my ace-9. Ace-Jack off, out of position versus middle position raise. I'm just going to take the nitty fold there. And versus deep stacked on a king-king 3 board. If he checks, I'm going to go ahead and check. If he donks out, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. And I'm going to go ahead and fold here. If there are a bunch of fish on the table, I'd probably call, but see now this guy's deep stacked and he's likely to squeeze. We just need to go ahead and just make the fold here. You don't want to call here just to see him go ahead and raise it up to get all the limpers to fold. So we're just going to go ahead and fold. So I get 3-bet, king, queen off, really isn't that strong of a hand. So I'm going to just go ahead and fold. And pocket queens, I'm going to go ahead and raise it up. 3-bet for value. Any calls, that's just a really horrendous flop for us. If we lead out here, only it's really ever going to call us here is an ace, so I'm just going to go ahead and check. And in the sliding range, a lot of pocket jacks are in his range, pocket kings, and pretty much a majority of his range is going to be composed of ace-x. And then when he leads out on the turn with a delayed c-bet, won't be surprised if he has pocket jacks or he has any sort of ace-x. So I get 3-bet here, never folding the jacks, but I do not want to 4-bet them. But when this opponent cold 4-bets, I'm actually going to sit out and fold my hand. And I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up with something like pocket queens or pocket kings. If this guy was deeper stacked, I'd call, but he really doesn't have much behind it all, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I am going to go ahead and 3-bet ace-9 off as a bluff. Was not expecting big blind to snap that off. And I was not expecting it to go 3 ways in 3-bet pot, and we completely missed the board, so we're just going to be check folding here to any sort of aggression. And I'm going to go ahead and sit out just to see what they snapped off my 3-bet with. Always interested in finding out what type of ranges my opponents are playing if it goes to showdown. Pocket 10s and king jack. Well, definitely understand that. I understand the pocket 10s, and I also understand the king jack. So definitely a bit of an uneventful session for me in terms of hands that I'm getting, but we are being put into some tough spots. I'm getting 3-bet a lot, and I think that's because I am running into the top of a lot of people's ranges. I don't think people are just playing overly aggressive. I think that people are 3-betting me because they have strong hands, and that's going to happen sometimes. And what you have to realize is when people are being aggressive, just don't assume that they are being aggressive for the sake of being aggressive. You should be assuming that they have a strong hand, especially at 5 and L and 10 and L. And here I am going to go ahead and 3-bet for value. We go ahead and just over half pot this as a semi-bluff. I do have an overcard, so it's a semi-bluff. And we're going to go ahead and lead out for value. I get called, and I think that he could have just picked up 2-pair on the turn. So for that reason, I'm just going to go ahead and flat and hope to spike 2-pair here. I am going to go for some really thin value. Hope to get called by like a king queen. But when he raises here, I'm just going to go ahead and call it off. I like to win 15% of the time, but I think he always... Wow, and yeah, that's about as bad as it gets there. I didn't put him on that hand, of all hands. But, you know, you never know what's going to show up in people's ranges when you're playing on a Thursday night. I can't fault him for, you know, calling the flop. Raising the turn didn't make much sense to me. But, you know, fishy players do fishy things, and he got lucky and hit another deuce on the river. Sometimes that happens. And I wouldn't have been surprised that if I raised on the turn that he would have been happy just to get in with the nut flush draw and bottom pair. So we pick up a gutter here, and we can represent the king. So I'm going to go ahead and lead out. Decent flop for us here. I'm going to go ahead and check to take a free card. I don't think I have that much fold equity, so there's no point in leading out there. And I'm definitely not folding here. I'm going to hit my draw around 80% of the time, and if he has trip threes or top pair top kicker, he's never folding. So it's a minus EV call, but it's a plus EV in terms of applied odds if I hit. And given this pricing, I'm never folding my ace queen. And I'm going to go ahead and raise. But we're not going to raise too big. And wow, that's pretty brutal again. Flush over flush. So definitely not my night so far. Pocket tens, just going to go ahead and flatten under the gun raise. Just go ahead and call. And I'm hoping that he does not have jacks or better, but I just don't see how I can fold here with such a big overpair. And he was just purely bluffing. So finally something works out and goes our way. But you know, I think that's a good point to note that people can be fairly aggressive in these games, so you have to watch out for that. Not that great of a turn, but I'm not going to stop barreling here. I'd rather take a bet fold line than just check it down and let him see a free card. And when it pairs on the river, I think that's good for us, but I'm just going to go ahead and check. And he ends up having the bigger king, so good for him. Not a good flop for us, and being sandwiched between both these players, I'm just going to go ahead and check. Jack 8, going to go ahead and open. This guy has deep note stacked, but I'm not too worried that he's too short stacked. Here I'm just going to flat a cutoff open. Here we do pick up the gutter for the nut straight, plus I have an over, so I'm going to go ahead and lead out here when it checks around on the flop. And when we completely miss out, we're pretty much done check folding, especially when the diamonds hit for the flush draw. And I really don't know how I won that hand, but I'm happy that I did. Great squeeze spot. I'm not going to call, especially when he calls. I think he has a stronger hand than me, so let's go ahead and fold. And here, we're going to go ahead and lead out for value. And I didn't realize the limper was here, otherwise I would have raised more, but when this guy goes ahead and just jams for 87 big blinds, and he gets snapped off. I'm easily folding here. I want to see what they have. This is just really interesting. Pocket aces, and I would have hit my set, so that's pretty hilarious. And I would have hit quads. Good times. I guess I should just moved on to the next table. Well, you know, that was a bad play on his part, but he's lucky that he did raise it that much. Because when somebody is 3-betting me from the blinds at 10 and L, I think that they tend to have a polarized range. So I probably would have called him if it was standard 3-bet sizing. And I would have spiked a set. And would have ended up having quads and would have taken his money. So his bad play ended up working out for him there. Here we're going to go ahead and bet on the larger side. Since the pot is so small, unfortunately he folds. Go ahead and top off on this table. When it goes around and there are already 3 players in the pot, I am never folding a6 suited. Hand I like to play multi-ways, going for the flush. And again, really bad flop, but I do have a backdoor, no flush draw, so I am going to bet half pot. And when he calls, we are pretty much done. Definitely not or not. Here I'm going to put a half pot bet out with top pair with the up down straight draw. And I'm just going to go ahead and check it down. And here we're going to check as well. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the hand replayer, interested to see what this opponent had. He called me with bottom pair, so I guess I overestimated his strength, calling an under the gun raise and calling a c-bet with bottom pair with a mediocre kicker. But it is 5 and L. I'm going to go ahead and flatten position. Not too worried about this opponent, and I have position on the ISO raiser, raising the limper, so easy flat for me here. Top pair, second best kicker, so obviously never going anywhere. Not a huge fan of the turn. If he keeps firing away, I'm pretty much just going to be done with this hand. Yeah, and when he fires a turn here, it just doesn't make any sense other than him having a 10x in his hand. And Jack 10 is definitely in his range, so is a bunch of suited connectors. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a really nitty fold there, and it's really not that nitty of a fold. When this guy's isolating the limpers fairly strong, I'm just going to go ahead and fold ace jack off. Keep myself out of some sticky situations and a potentially big pot. Ace-2 suited, we can open this up, especially since we are playing a bit deep-jacked. Good flop for us. I get 3-bet. I don't like flattening out of position, but jacks aren't strong enough to be 4-betting when somebody's 3-betting you when you're raising under the gun. And we're just going to go ahead and check. And we can never fold here. I'm just hoping that he doesn't wake up with queens, kings, or aces here. But with pocket jacks, I just don't see how I can fold with Nothing but overs, and at this point in time I think that I have the best hand. I'm going to bet a very small amount to seem like I have an ace, and he's going to call me with 4s and 6s with an ace kicker. Fortunately he folds, so I wouldn't be surprised if he has something like ace king or ace queen. That's what really makes sense and what's in his range. So top pair with a decent kicker. Gonna go ahead and lead out. And I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze with big slick here. Try to squeeze out the initial raiser, and this guy's gotta be weak. He can never really call. Gonna go ahead and isolation raise, try to get these deep stacks out and get heads up against his opponent in position. So you probably noticed that I do not like to steal too light in these games, typically because people don't tend to fold to too many steals, and especially at the 10L tables, people are starting to become more aware where they're defending their blinds much better. At 5L, they just tend to be more stationary, so I like to have a stronger range. Especially when somebody is a calling station, then I think that you need to have a stronger range, because your positional advantage doesn't really mean that much if they're calling station, and neither the skill advantage. It just comes down to the cards and nothing more. I'm going to go ahead and flat here in position with the weak ace. We get bottom pair with top kicker. He leads out for almost 2/3 pot size bet. I'm going to go ahead and fold. Give him the respect. Easy fold versus 3-bet. Interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and sit out and watch this hand. I'm definitely not calling. I'm tempted to call, but I don't want to get all in for 50 big blinds versus 3 fish here. But I definitely want to see how it pans out and how it plays out. Lead out here is a semi-bluff middle pair with the straight draw, and we pick up trips here. And I am going to go ahead and bet just under half pot size bet. Hopefully he doesn't have a boat. And I wasn't paying attention. I'm going to go ahead and pull this up on the replayer since I was paying attention to this hand. So I bet a small amount there so he would call me with a pair of jacks, and I'm assuming that's probably what he called me with. I'm going to go ahead and call in position. I don't expect to get squeezed too often, especially if 2 shorties in here and one person just over 100 big blinds, but the short stack does decide to squeeze. I'm surprised he decides to squeeze an under the gun raise from a deep stacked here. And I'm just going to go ahead and fold. So unfortunately the hand replayer isn't working, so I don't know what they had up here in this 3-bet pot, but that's alright. Not that big of a deal. I guess I'll just have to watch it when I actually have the video rendered and created and ready to go. Ace Deuce, great spot to potentially squeeze as a bluff, but seeing how they're both deep stacked, I'm just going to flat for implied odds, playing multi-ways. And here versus a short stack, I'm just going to go ahead and flat. Big Slick, yeah, I'd be fine with raising it and looking to get it in. Heads up versus him, but I don't mind flatting sometimes as well. And when this flop just totally misses out on us, just go ahead and fold. And same thing up here. So decent flop for us, decent flop for me to check to balance my range, and also for pot control with a weak ace, and to get him to bluff out. So easy check call line here. We do pick up the draw for the straight draw as well. Here I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet my tens. He calls. I don't like that flop, but I'm going to go ahead and bet fold. Again, I'm just calling again with my ace. And then when he jams, he's obviously always has an ace here, so I'm just go ahead and fold. And I don't know what I beat in his range. My kicker is just so small here. I don't know if I win a third of the time. So I'm just going to go ahead and make the nitty fold there. Get 3-bet, just go ahead and fold. I'm going to go ahead and call in position versus a min raise. He has 120 big blinds. This guy's semi-deep stacked. And I'm semi-deep stacked as well, so definitely want to play. And here I do pick up gutter to the straight, so I'm going to call purely for implied odds. I don't have the pot odds to call. And here I'm just going to go ahead and raise the limpers. Again, I'm going to go ahead and call one more time. He's giving me good odds. I end up hitting the straight on the river. I'm going to go ahead and raise it up, half pot, get him to call. And he folds, unfortunately. And against this opponent, I do ISO raise the limpers here, the straights here, the flushes here, the queens here. I'm going to go ahead and just check. I don't think I have much fold equity against an opponent like that. And fortunately, just go ahead and make the fold there. So not a good flop for us. Tons of aces and kings in their range. So with the pocket fours, we're pretty much done with the hand. We really only have one out even if it checks because we don't want to see a club on the turn anyways. And again, I'm just going to flatten position with my 5-6, hoping that more people will come along. We won't be at squeeze and we'll go multi-ways with a great implied odds type of a hand. And I flop the bottom end of the straight. I'm going to be playing this very aggressively. I'm going to go ahead and raise it up, and I'm going to look to get it in. There's a straight draw, the flush draw, so there's definitely a lot in here. If he has Jack-10, good for him, but he doesn't, and I take it down, so that works out my way. And I really don't know how I won this hand, but, you know, sometimes you win the ones you don't expect. So here we're just going to go ahead and raise it up. Raising the limper with our weak ace as a bluff here. Just take down his big blind and punish him for limping. Versus under the gun raise, I'm just going to go ahead and flatten position. I think it plays well against his opening range, unless he's at the very top end of his range. And versus him in open, I'm just going to flat pocket deuces. You can 3-bet these as a bluff, and you can flat as well. Either are fine. When he checks, I'm going to go ahead and lead out as a semi-bluff. It's semi-bluff because I have overs to hit an ace or a king by the turn. Unfortunately, he raised a limper. I wanted to flat with the 5-6 suited, going multi-ways, but unfortunately that didn't happen. I like to play lots of suited connectors and lots of small pocket pairs in zone because people get attached to top pair, and if you spike a set or if you spike a straight or the flush, you're going to get paid off. And that's really where a lot of your money is going to come from, is those really strong hands where somebody has top pair, top kicker, and you spike the flush or you spike the straight, or you have a the set that is hidden. That's really where you're going to get paid off the majority of your hands here. I get 3-bet from the short stack, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold. He has no money left behind. There's no point in calling, and I wouldn't call anyways with such a small pocket pair. So not a good flop for us, but I think that if he doesn't have a diamond, he's always folding here. So I'm going to bet on the larger side. And then if he calls, I'm just shutting down. And even if he does have the flush draw, now we picked up some equity. But if he's not folding on the flop, he's not folding on turn. So I'm just going to take a free card. And I hit the nut straight here. And so I'm going to go ahead and lead out for value. Here I'm just going to go ahead and check. Again, I have showdown value with ace high, so I'm happy to just check this hand down. Versus some shorter stacks, I'd probably open if it was folded to me, but versus deeper stacks, even if it was folded to me, I wouldn't open that. Ace 9 off. I'm going to go ahead and open here. Nobody looks really deep stacked or short stacked, so I think it's fine to play. Suited connector out of position. I think I'm going to call because I think this guy's not going to squeeze that often. He might actually come along if I call. And it's a good flop for us. We pick up the gutter for the straight, and we pick up the flush draw. And when it checks, I'm going to go ahead and lead out on the turn as a semi-bluff. Here, I'm going to call in position. And with the ace, I'm going to go ahead and lead out here. And we end up getting the fold with our fold equity there. King, queen just flat in position versus under the gun raise. I think it's fine. And we have a fishy jam. Too bad I don't have any pocket pair. I'd probably call with almost any pocket pair there. And unfortunately, I am not deep stacked, so I'm not going to call. Go ahead and fold. Again, I'm going to sit out because I like to see what people are 3-betting with, but that would have been a great flop for us. And now my rabbit cam on, and yeah, definitely if I played that hand and I called that 3-bet, I would have been committed to that pot. Top pair with second nut flush draw. Really strong hand. And hopefully somebody opens so I can 3-bet my pocket aces. Maybe we can double up here. And he makes it small. I'm going to make mine, well, he limps. So what am I doing? I'm going to make my ISO raise a bit bigger. I kept thinking that for some reason I was playing 5-0 up here and he min raised. Here I'm going to go ahead and lead out. Just over half pot size bet representing the king. And I could pick up an ace. I'm going to go ahead and check the turn. Now I picked up the ace. I have good showdown value. Oh, sorry, I picked up the jack. And when he leads out, I'm going to go ahead and fold. He's always got a king or a queen. And when he leads out here, I'm just going to go ahead and flat with the aces. I think he always has... I'm going to go ahead and make a really nitty fold with my aces here. I think he always has a set. So I'm going to go ahead and fold. That's just, the line that he took doesn't make any sense. I don't expect him to just be bombing away multiple streets. Pot size bet on the flop, and then the king hits a turn, which hits a lot of my range, and he still bombs away. So he's obviously not afraid of the king, and so I think that he either flops 2-pair or he flops the set, and aces are probably almost never good there. So when you find yourself in a situation like that, you just have to make the nitty lay down, and you know, just because you have pocket aces doesn't mean you're going to win all the time. And if you think about his limp calling range, he's got a lot of suited connectors and suited one gappers and smaller pocket pairs in his range. So that definitely, that flop hit his range pretty hard, and I wouldn't be surprised if he had 2-pair or set. I'm going to go ahead and flat, again, because I like playing my suit connectors in position to the razor, and I don't expect to get squeezed too often. And as I say that, of course, I get squeezed. But when he calls, I'm tempted to call, but the sizing is just really big, so I'm just going to go ahead and fold. We get pocket aces again. Hopefully it works out for us this time. And we get a raise from the deep stack, so, and this is just an easy raise it up, and I'm just going to make it big because we're playing zone. Hopefully he has a big pocket pair, but unfortunately he has nothing and folds. And we get aces again, so I'm tempted. I'm going to actually try a different line. Actually, there's no deep stacks here except for one, but if there was a deep stacked, I would try taking a limp re-raise line. It's a good flop for us. I'm going to bet just under pot size bet. Blind versus blind, I have top pair, and here I'm always snapping and calling it off. So that's definitely a good result for us, especially after our aces up here on table 2 ran into what looked to be a really strong hand by a limper that called a limp in, called my raise. So glad that it worked out down here. So the Jack 10 off, I didn't feel like ISO raising, and I didn't feel like just limping behind there. If it was suited, I would, but offsuit, I decided to make the fold there. King Jack offsuit, I think this plays fine. It's a bit marginal. So I'm just going to go ahead and flat since we're going three ways. And decent flop for us. We have a backdoor second nut flush draw, and we have a gutter to the nut straight. But given these pot odds, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. Easy check call line here with my king queen. And easy check raise on the turn. Unfortunately, he checks behind. Here I'm going to go ahead and squeeze. Pick up aces again on 10 and L. Maybe it'll work out this time on 10 and L and we get a min open under the gun. I'm going to go ahead and make this big. Hopefully this guy just jams over the top. Come on, you can do it. Just jam it all in. Thank you, sir. And let's not get coolered. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Pocket fives, I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet bluff these. People tend to fold to a lot of 3-bets from the blind here. And so it's a really profitable move to be taking that type of a move. And king 10 off, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I think you could 3-bet there. Flatting is a bit more marginal. I'd like to have a bit of a stronger hand, especially against a bunch of unknowns. I don't open King Jack off under the gun, it's too weak. Lots of people, especially lots of beginners, make the mistake of opening that. Got to be a good player to be playing King Jack off from under the gun, simply because you're going to find yourself in a lot of reverse implied odds type of situations. King Jack suited, of course, is a bit stronger. I don't mind that if you're a decent player, but King Jack off, you just have to be able to play marginal hands out of position very well, and if you can't play them out of position very well, then you probably shouldn't be playing them at all. Well, seeing how this is going multi-ways, I think this guy might squeeze, but for a half a blind, half a big blind, I don't see how I can fold. And again, I'm going to be squeezing. Could flat here, but he's min opening and he's min flatting, so I'm just going to go ahead and make the move. And if they call, it's strong enough to play post flop, especially if I spike a set. But as you've seen, people just tend to fold to a lot of those 3-bets, and my 3-bet percentage down here at this table is 14%, where I'm picking up a lot of those hands where you can 3-bet bluff with, so it's working out pretty well. And I don't like calling here, but I don't think I can ever fold here, getting literally 4-1 on my money on such a small 3-bet. And I was really only looking to spike 2 pair, but even though I spiked a pair of queens top pair, I really don't like it. So even if he fires out a bet here, I'm probably check folding. And especially when he gets raised, so just an easy fold. The only reason I called there is because the other player called his min 3-bet, and I was just getting such good pot odds that if I spiked 2 pairs, then I was going to get paid off. Getting 9 to 1, I'm obviously going to be calling here, hoping to hit a pair of aces on the turn. Here I'm just going to go ahead and flat, middle position open with my ace-jack offsuit. And we're just going to go ahead and fold this flop. King 10 off, just again, I'm going to go ahead and fold. I did it earlier, so I'm just going to stick to that strategy of folding King 10 off. If it was 2.5x or min raise, I'd probably raise him, but when he's doing 3x on the button, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. It's so easy for him to have something like a King Jack or a King Queen, since there's so many combos of theirs. It's a total of 32 combos of those hands that dominate me, not to mention Ace King as well. Add on another 16 combos. So just go ahead and make the nitty fold. King Queen offsuit. I think it plays fine versus a cutoff opening range, even though we're out of position. Still spike top pair with a good kicker. But on this board texture, I'm going to just go ahead and give him the pot, especially when he fires out such a large c-bet sizing. I get a massive 3-bet here. Just go ahead and fold. When people are just throwing out insanely large 3-bets, it just says, I have a monster, I have a monster. Definitely not a fan of this flop, so I'm just going to go ahead and check. Middle pair, we don't have a club. Not a good flop for us, even though it's blind versus blind. But I am going to call once. And we end up hitting trips on the turn. And not a huge fan of that river. I'm going to try to get him to bluff. And unfortunately he doesn't bluff. I think that I don't get any value by betting unless he bluffs anyways. And then I think here I have the best hand a lot of times, so I'm just going to go ahead and call. It's hard for him to have trip 10s simply because of 2 10s being on the board. Half of them are gone from the deck. But when he fires again on the turn, I think I have to give him some credit. Go ahead and raise the limper with our ace 10 offsuit. And this is a good flop for us. I'm going to go ahead and bet pot here. Fortunately, he doesn't have any sort of the draw, and he can't call with a king or a jack or an ace. Here I'm just going to go ahead and flatten position. This guy does raise a limper, but I have position on him, and blind versus blind and what he's raising limper with, I think King Jack off plays fine in position. But definitely not with this flop texture here. Hits a lot of his range and potentially his if he has a pair. So go ahead and lay down my hand. So we're just over an hour with this video. I'll probably let it go for another 15 minutes. Try to get a long session in here just to see how things really go when you're playing a longer session on Zone. overall, I'm not being results oriented up here, down just over half a buy-in, and over on 5NL, I'm up around 20 big blinds. So, nothing too much to talk about. Pretty standard. Pocket deuces, easy open. Unfortunately, we do not hit our set. I think this is fine board texture to c-bet bluff. And we take it down. Go ahead and raise the limper. Not too happy when this guy flats. I'm going to go ahead and check, even though I hit top pair here. I definitely like this turn. It gives him lots of draws. I'm just going to go ahead and call because he could potentially have trip nines, but on the river we just pretty much hit the nuts here. And this is just, I think we're going to be chopping a lot, but I'm obviously raising big here for value. But we end up taking it down. And sorry, we don't chop a lot because I have the queen. And I think you have a couple options there. I think you could just, jam it all in. Or you could just do like a standard raise like I did, close to a pot size bet. I think either are going to be just fine. And unfortunately, Bovada's hand history and replayer just aren't cutting it tonight. Nothing's really working. Some nights they just don't tend to work so well. Other nights they tend to work better. You just never know what you're going to get. And I did get it pulled up, so I'll go ahead and show you what he snapped off with. He flopped trip nines, and he had nines full tens. I'm surprised he called the raise. I think if I bet more, he probably is not calling my raise, simply because he probably thinks that I actually do have a 10 in my range. Here and I pick up an up down and go ahead and bet out. And it's interesting that he actually did pay me off when he had the nines full tens. Simply because when I take a check call line and he has trip nines, he's got to assume that either I have trip nines, which is highly unlikely, or I have a 10 or bigger pocket pair, and more so that I have a 10 in my range than anything else. Here I'm just going to go ahead and fold. Actually, being a min raise, I actually am going to call, seeing how this person's also semi-deep stacked. Versus, and looks like we're getting lots of hands here, which is nice. And I'm just going to go ahead and flat. And on the turn, I am going to, again, just check. And I think we're just going to have to go ahead and raise and look to get the money in. And if he has 7 with a better kicker, good for him. But I'm never folding there. So it looks like we're closing out the session pretty good down on this table over here. Things are working out over 3 buy-ins deep. And that's really what it's all about here on Zone is you don't have to bluff that often. You'll notice that I am 3-bet bluffing from the blinds a lot, and I'm finding good spots to try to pick up pots when people are showing, being really passive and not going after the pot. But I'm not getting out of line with, 2 and 3 barrels of bluffs here and there. Just not doing that. Here I'm just go ahead and check call. Here I'm just going to go ahead and bet for just bounce my range a bit. When he checks, I'm going to go ahead and bet the turn. And when he raises, I'm just going to go ahead and fold. I have nothing but a really weak flush draw here, so it's going to be just an easy fold for me. And on this flop texture, I think that we can go ahead and represent the king. It's dry enough that I think that we can represent that. Yeah, there's a flush draw and there are a couple straight draws, but if they don't have a king, they can't call. Yes, they can call with straight draw on the flush draw, but it's not as likely. And that's pretty much the worst turn card in the world. Flush is there, straight is there. Nothing helps me, so I'm pretty much done with this hand. And just go ahead and fold. So we took a stab, didn't work. That's alright. We get called here again. I'm pretty much done with this because he either has a flush draw or he has the boat, and when he's betting out here, doesn't make much sense if he does have a boat because you think you'd want to let your opponent catch up, but thanks for betting, I'm going to fold. So I'm going to go ahead and sit out next hand, and we'll go ahead and call it a video. Maybe we can do well with our pocket sevens here. Never know. So I'm going to go ahead and raise a limper. And I really don't like this board texture. And then when he just, I don't really know what he's doing here. This doesn't make much sense. He just overbets the pot. My last hand, I'm just going to go ahead and fold and show him what I had and say, well, I don't know what you're doing there, but good job, buddy. He could have diamond draw, but good for him. Could have pair of nines, good for him too. So yeah, that's going to go ahead and conclude this session. Overall, I think it's just under a break-even session or very close to a break-even session. There were some interesting spots. Didn't do so well at the beginning of the session. Picked back up and did pretty good near the end of the session. And, I think I just only made one bad call up here on this table where my opponent had ace deuce and he hit trip deuces on the river where I had top pair, top kicker. The line that he took would just confuse the hell out of me, and it just didn't make any sense. And there's a reason it didn't make any sense, because I didn't put him on the nut flush draw and he picked up bottom pair, and he ended up hitting trips on the river with bottom pair. I thought that I was winning a decent amount of time where, I thought that the deuce actually helped me by pairing it, giving me a better kicker, but, you never know what's going to happen. And then also, I think I made a really good laydown up here on this table when I had the pocket aces and my opponent limped. I raised the limper and he called, another player called. He donked into me for almost a pot-sized bet on a really dry flop, and then he donked into me again for a pot-sized bet when the king hit the turn, not being afraid of the king. So I think that was a really good fold on my end. And then, overall for the session, I actually ended up winning 53 cents thanks to my 5-L tables down here. I lost a little bit up here, that's alright, and I did pretty good down here on the 5-L. And one thing just to remember when you're playing zone is that you're not going to have a winning session every session. And about halfway through the session, I didn't think I was going to have a winning session, but it just didn't matter. I'm here just to get some volume in and just to continue to play and to play these games and do my bankroll challenge and also do my challenge for Bovada Zone, trying to get a decent volume in just to see what a decent win rate would be at these games, playing a very, tight aggressive type of a game, not getting out of line. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I did do some, a fair amount of 3-bet bluffing when I had the opportunity, and that's something I talked about in another video, and I really haven't done that in the past, but I'm implementing that into my game here, and it seems to be working really well. So if you play 5-L and 10-L zone, definitely give it a try. I think it's worth it. I think you're going to have a decent amount of success, because people tend to overfold 3 bets here in these games versus you know, if they're opening late position and you're on the button, or if you're in the small blind or big blind. But that's going to go ahead and conclude this video. Thanks for watching. If you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe, and we'll see you at the next video.